Welcome to another video, everyone. Today we are going to be looking at vehicles, but just watching a playthrough that I had a little while ago. Just going over the very specifics of how to play and addressing some of the issues people might have with vehicles. One of them being the fact that you don't seem to have very many units on the front line and what to do about that. So first off, we got our Khan coming out. That's going to be very easy and basic. He's going to be doing all of our metal income right there. And then we got another Khan coming out right after him, going into windmills. That's a pretty standard build as well. If you want to bring your commander up to the front, then you might get out a third Khan and start making either a Khan turret or just continue with the Khan aiding the factory while you push your commander out. Those are not necessarily things you have to do, but it is recommended. And then I'm also going to be pulling out some blitzes because they are cheaper at 100 metal versus expensive at 200. Most of the other vehicles are 200. And we're bringing the blitz up to the front to just make sure that our Khan is safe and catching any scouting that might be happening as well. That's the goal. We also have our minesweeper out. You don't have to add a minesweeper if you don't want to, but on a map that has lots of wind, minesweepers aren't so bad. So we're going to be basically minesweeping or laying mines on key positions like a metal extractor, because that's almost a guarantee hit. And we're just keeping our blitzes pushed up. We have like 4 or 5 of them coming out, and now we can see we are out of metal, so it's going to be important that we end up sucking up these 2 solar panels because that has a lot of metal in it. So we end up getting our blitzes out to the front, just watching and carefully making sure that our minesweeper doesn't get shot down. And as you can see, we're basically out of metal at this point, but that's okay. We will scale eventually and it won't be too bad. Now, the key here is you don't want to lose these blitzes early on if you can help it. But at the same time, you still want to try to gain an advantage with them. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this minesweeper. It's probably not going to work out, especially since we have a lot of people coming in. So we end up pulling back everything we can because we're getting attacked. So we have our blitzes pushing, try to pull these grunts off because it's very important that our mine layer stays safe. We're going to be using him later on in the game. Now we're getting out our first tanky units slowly. Obviously we're pretty weak, so we don't have that much metal or anything. And I should have sucked up these solar panels. I must have been distracted. But anyway, we start overflowing energy, and we want to make sure that we use our energy extremely efficiently. That's going to be the only way that we end up being able to get more units out on the front in a good amount of time. We're almost done with our mexes, and now we have a decent amount of metal coming in, which is very nice. And we aren't really losing anything on the front yet. We've lost like 1 blitz and did a little bit of damage to a grunt. That's not too bad. Oh, someone already detected our mines. That's interesting. I didn't realize that last game that I did there. Okay, that's good to know. Anyway, we also are putting out mines on their front as well, just because we wanted to help our teammate hold this canyon type thing here, the crater. So we got 1, 2 Janus out. Our third Janus is out as well, and we have a decent amount of metal. We can actually start pumping out units a bit faster now, getting an energy storage, and probably going to be going into more energy converters as well. Not really playing aggressive. You don't really want to play aggressive with vehicles until you hit a certain threshold that's very, very powerful, and that would be at the point where you have a large grouping of them. We got 4 large vehicles out, 4 tanks, 4 heavy tanks, which isn't really a ton, and it's not enough to do massive amounts of damage, but this is going to be close to what we need to survive. So I'm going to start getting these 4 tanks up to the front line and just holding. We can kind of zoom past this part of it. Now in this game, I end up not really getting pushed. These guys play a bit scared, and so I don't really end up having to worry about anything, and I end up being able to scale. But if you end up getting pushed, you can easily survive it with this amount of tanks. Just let me try to explain how to push, or how to survive a push. If your enemy is ending up like aggressing on you really heavily, then what you can do is you can, you know, match them. You know, you come in and hit their attack, but you want to come in a sweeping pattern because vehicles are forward facing. So the sweeping pattern makes it easy to weave in and out of battle, rather than bots, which can go forward and backward rapidly. Vehicles have to swoop in and then like swing out. Okay, so I always explain it like this. There's a rotation movement for vehicles if you want to be in battle. So if they're pushing you heavily, what you can do is you can just constantly be falling back, and vehicles like the Janus will constantly be launching heat-seeking missiles that will end up really crushing the enemy and blowing them up like instantly. So these vehicles are very powerful, even though they do cost a lot of money. So I don't necessarily give a great example of like fighting necessarily, but I give you a good example of a standard of how to play. Just the type of units you want to get out first, being a little bit more cautious in the early game so that you don't end up getting completely decimated, because bots come out a lot faster and they can overwhelm your early vehicles. But as the game gets going, you become more strong because your vehicles are tougher. So just giving yourself a little bit of time to scale and playing the early game a little bit safer is a really good way to look at it. So hopefully these are some tips that will help you as you're learning to play vehicles and maybe make things a little bit easier for you on the front line. I know it's not a ton of details. We can also go into like taking out turrets and stuff. Honestly, if they're set up like this, there's no reason to take out a bunch of turrets because they're not pushing us. We don't need the front line. We can just match our allies. If we go too far forward, then we're gonna end up being choked by multiple people. So we're basically safe at this position right here, and we're doing plenty of work that we need to be doing. Anyway, the canyon ended up, or the crater ended up having some problems, so I'm trying to buy him some time. These Janus missiles putting in some massive work, and now that my tanks are a bit damaged, I'm gonna pull back. And this is the strength of tanks. We were up here blowing up the bots pretty well, and now I'm pulling back and none of my tanks are dead after being in combat. So that's the strength of vehicles, is the fact that they can survive hits, which is really, really nice. So yeah, you can just weave them in and out of combat. If you have even 1 or 2 construction vehicles healing them, it'll be huge, because then you won't lose tanks very often at all, and they have that extended range and really can wipe out the front pretty easily. So yeah, that's how you want to play with vehicles. Ultimately, stay safe early. In the mid game, you can push if you feel like you want to. Like this is interesting that I didn't, but I didn't need to, so no reason. You can push if you feel you want to. Maybe throw in some artillery to take out all of these turrets up front. pretty easy to do with artillery. And they can also end up taking out things like the heavy laser, because rocket bots don't really have the ability to take out heavy lasers, but artillery pieces do. They have a longer range than the heavy laser does. So there's plenty of advantages you can get with vehicles that you do not have with bots. And ultimately they are stronger units that will just sustain in a fight much better than bots will. So you have to play with them differently for sure, and play a little bit more patient. But once you hit that point where you have a ton of heavy vehicles, you can really destroy any army of bots pretty easily. All right, guys, I hope that's helpful. If you enjoyed the video, definitely subscribe and share with anyone who's getting into Beyond All Reason, and maybe people who might even be struggling with vehicles a bit. Maybe a couple of these tips will help them get better at the game. And as always, I will see you guys on the battlefield.